want to buff nerd. I really want to buff nerd.
Want to buff nerd.
Never buff nerd.
I buff nerd.
I'm trying to do an Indian accent, but it sounds terrible.
I want to buff nerd.
And lots of buff nerds.
Okay, so almost all fiction contains at least one nerd character. You know, the weak, dorky looking character in massive glasses that could probably create a robot to take over the world in their sleep. Those guys. Here's the thing. In fiction, the nerd is an archetype, like the mentor or the warrior daughter. The problem we have is that there isn't a lot of variety within that archetype. In ancient Greece, the nerds and the jocks were often the same people. They had this idea that weak bodies made weak minds. Turns out activity makes a better mood, so a better mood makes learning easier, and easier learning makes smarter people. Nowadays, we have weaklings in bad moods and weak minds. Weak nerds didn't appear until the 1950s, when convenience was becoming a thing. People had this idea that small and weak meant you were smart, like the brains took more nutrients than it needed and they didn't take care of themselves, with jocks doing the opposite. Until the 2000s, weak nerds were only reserved for comedy or horror. Now they're everywhere. It's not that the archetype is limited, but the writers are. When writers limit themselves to a single nerd in a given group, they have to rely on the overdone stereotypes. Not to mention that they use dorks, nerds, and geeks interchangeably when they are distinct groups that overlap. Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius has the main trio fit each of those individual groups. Jimmy is the nerd whose obsession is based in logic and numbers, exploring the bounds of science. Sean is the geek whose obsession is expressed through his collection and lore or knowledge, seeking to share his passion. And Carl is the dork, whose obsession is based in comfort and social inability, wishing to make connections. There's an entire comedy skit about the differences between dorks, nerds, geeks, and stalkers. Hollywood has lately been obsessed with diversity, with its overemphasis on identity politics. But before all that, books, movies, and comics had variety in characters, with the focus on exploring archetypes. That's why you could look at a psi-wielding mutant ninja turtle with anger issues, or a tattooed unicorn with a fashion sense, and go, wow, they're so relatable, they're just like me! The Ninja Turtles are a really good example because they've been redone so many times, yet each is so unique despite being the same character each time. So then, how do you build variety in the nerd archetype? For starters, have multiple nerds and give them different areas of expertise. Hackers fall under software nerds. They can understand the computer code and bend its digital will. This doesn't mean that they can build a computer from scratch. Some nerds can have multiple areas of expertise. Varian from Tangled is an alchemist. His areas of expertise are chemistry and engineering. He can make a truth cookie and build a giant robot, but he wouldn't know how to make it talk. And so on and so forth. One of the worst things you can do is equate genius with being amazing at computers. That's lazy writing and lowers the IQ of the character, especially if they're a pre-established character whose genius was never about computers in the first place.
One of the best examples of a buff nerd actually comes from Sherlock Holmes. He's got like dancer's muscles, I guess. I don't know. He's actually kind of on the skinny side. Watson describes him like that several times. But there is a scene in The Adventure of the Speckled Band. The ejaculation had been drawn from my companion in the fact that our door had been suddenly dashed open and that a huge man had framed himself in the aperture. His costume was a particular mixture of the professional and the agricultural, having a black top hat, a long frock coat, and a pair of high gaiters, with a hunting crop swinging in his hand. So tall was he that his hat actually brushed the crossbar of the doorway, and his breadth seemed to span it across from side to side. A large face, seared with 1,000 wrinkles, burned yellow with the sun, and marked with every evil passion, was turned from one to the other of us, with his deep-set, bile-shot eyes, and his high, thin, fleshless nose, gave him somewhat the resemblance to a fierce old bird of prey. "Which of you is Holmes?" asked this apparition. "My name, sir, but you have the advantage of me," said my companion quietly. "I am Dr. Grimsby Roylott of Stoke Moran." "Indeed, doctor," said Holmes blandly. "Pray, take a seat." "I will do nothing of the kind. My stepdaughter has been here. I have traced her. What has she been saying to you?" "It is a little cold for the time of year," said Holmes. "What has she been saying to you?" screamed the old man furiously. "But I heard that the crocuses promise well," continued my companion impetuously. "Ha! You put me off, do you?" said our new visitor, taking a step forward and shaking his hunting crop. "I know you, you scoundrel! I have heard of you before! You are Holmes, the meddler!" My friend smiled. "Holmes, the busybody!" His smile broadened. "Holmes, the Scotland Yard Jack-in-office!" Holmes chuckled heartily. "Your conversation is most entertaining," said he. "When you go out, close the door, for there is a decided draught. I will go when I have said my say. Don't you dare to meddle with my affairs. I know that Miss Stoner has been here. I traced her. I am a dangerous man to fall foul of. See here." He stepped swiftly forward, seized the poker, and bent it into a curve with his huge brown hands. "See that you keep yourselves out of my grip," he snarled, and hurled the twisted poker into the fireplace. He strode out of the room. "He seems a very amiable person," said Holmes, laughing. "I am not quite so bulky, but if he had remained, I might have shown him that my grip was not much more feeble than his own." As he spoke, he picked up the steel poker and, with a sudden effort, straightened it out.
Also, something you might want to take into account is the setting the nerd lives in and what they do for a living. One of the biggest issues we have is that people always write nerds as though they can barely carry their own weight, much less another person's, when they routinely build and dismantle room-sized machines in less than a day. Dilton Doily from Archie Comics is a particularly egregious example. He's played off as a 90-pound weakling for most of his stories. Then there's the rare story where it turns out that he's very athletic. He's a fast little bugger in 2 stories where he did gymnastics, which requires flexibility, strength, and agility, and several stories of him being crazy good at baseball. He also has hundreds of devices that he has hand-built without anyone ever noticing. Yeah, he's friends with the strongest guy in school, but there has been a few times where he's held his own against a much larger opponent. I know it's a comedy series, but haha, the nerdy guy is so weak. It's nowhere near as funny as this guy is 5'2" and reads Shakespeare. How is he so freaking heavy? I know a Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon has the same issue. He's very weak despite being a blacksmith. Do you know how strong you have to? Do you know how strong you're going to be after a week of blacksmithing? He should be able to throw a mace with one hand. Mostly his right arm, because it's the one he works with. Varian Entangled is a twig, but can carry at least twice his own weight. Why is this the only one to get it right? Any repetitive task that requires rigorous movement will result in muscle. The more intense it is, the stronger you get. In stories set in high school, the nerds and band geeks are always played off as the weakest and easily bullied.
Go away, Bash! I don't want a wedgie! I already gave you a wedgie! I just want to give you your change!
In reality, a guy who carries 40 pounds of books and school supplies for fun could probably knock you over. And band geeks? Name one football player who can carry another across the field twice while whistling the entire time. These are 15-year-olds doing an activity that originated in the military. They're nuts. It's also common for the jocks to be nerds, especially if their position as a team requires high intelligence. Nature nerds carry 60 to 100 pounds of equipment while climbing uphill, so you probably don't want to pick a fight with the Grat Brothers. One of the best shows we've seen that has the most variety in the nerd archetype is Eureka. It is a show about a town made entirely of nerds. The only non-nerds are the sheriff and the occasional military invasion. They have had every kind of nerd under the sun. Other than being really horny and the scientific gibberish, it was a really good show. Star Trek was all about nerds in space. Smart people who push themselves to the limit to explore new worlds. So just try to write more interesting nerds. Give them limits, have several of them, and don't forget to add muscle where it should be. And that's what we've got. Bye! Like, comment, and subscribe. Don't be rude to me. Bye!